Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, hello, hello. Another beautiful fun chat today. And it's interesting because this is number 54, but 50 of our fun chats ago, we had this wonderful guest and we brought her back on to tell us more about her life in the 1950s. She's a very special person to us. And Jackie, I think you can tell more about our guests more about her and the fact that you might just recognize, if you're a North Dakota person, you might just recognize her maiden name, which was Goehring. Some people pronounce it Goehring, but we always knew it as Goehring. And her dad's name was Howard, and of course, he was our dad's best friend. But interestingly, in the state of North Dakota, there is Mr. Doug Goehring, who is North Dakota's Commissioner of Agriculture, and believe it or not, Howard is Doug's grandpa. So this may draw a little connection for you as we talked with a very important person in our life about the Goehring family. So Jackie, can you explain more about this today?
Well, before I do that, we're going to just have everyone please peruse your screen, and you'll notice that the little banner running across the bottom is called While the Windmill Watched.com. Up in the right-hand corner, you'll see a picture of our book, and that is a beautiful North Dakota sunset which wraps around the cover. And on the bottom of the front page, you'll see, or the front cover, you'll see a little white spot. Well, what that is, it indicates that we have proudly announced that we are a National Independent Press Award in the regional nonfiction category. And that was awarded this year in April to us. So that's really a cool thing. I want to, do introduce Judy, but I also want you to, when you're perusing and go to www.While the Windmill Watched, you will find a list of our book tour stops, and we're going to start next 29th of this month and go through the 2nd and 3rd of October. And so do look to see where we'll be when, and maybe it'll be in your vicinity. We're going to have a couple stops in Minot, in Bismarck, and Fargo. So check it out. Maybe you do come and say hi to us.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Me too.
Without further ado, as they say, we're going to get back and introduce our guest. Born in 1942, Judy Goehring Miller grew up on a farm near Menoken. She has the distinction of being one of our babysitters. Her father, Howard, was a good friend of our dad, Jack. Now, at the beginning of this broadcast, you'll see a picture of Jack and Howard, best friends, right at the beginning there. Anyway, Judy now resides on a ranch west of Mandan, and she's been a fun chat guest before, as Janine mentioned. You can scroll down on our website and find chat number 4, October 11th, 2021. So, Judy, welcome back to the Fun Chat.
Thank you.
Hi, Judy.
Hey.
Good to be here.
So this will be a continuation of the things that we talked of before, but we're going to begin with the looking back through the 1st and 8th grades of our country school that you attended. We all 3 attended this school, a wonderful school. So this Menoken school did not offer kindergarten when you attended in the 50s. So how did your mother prepare you for the first grade?
Well, being as I had two older siblings that were both, one was 6 years older than I am, and the other is 4 years older than I am. And then that's how I got kind of prepared to go to school. I was ready, I think. I didn't know how to read. Back when I started first grade, they did not have phonics. And to this day, I'm not the best at pronouncing words because I didn't have phonics. We learned to read by sight. Like I'm going to take the easy word like Jane. We learned that was Jane, Jane. Phonics did not come in till I think I was in the 5th or 6th grade before we ever had phonics.
Mm-hmm.
Would that have been when Mrs. Ernst came to Menoken grade school and was the long time elementary teacher?
Mrs. Ernst started teaching. She was my 4th grade school teacher. And then I had a different teacher for every year of my 8 grades at Menoken, except for the 5th and 6th grade. I had Mr. Grantier in the 5th and 6th grade. But other than that, I had a different teacher every year. Don't ask me their names. One of them I forgot completely. So,
You mentioned learning the word Jane. Tell us about Jane. Was that associated with Dick and Sally and
right? And you didn't pronounce them. It was by sight. It was see Dick run, see Jane run. It was not a phonics, and to this day I have a hard time if I see a new word.
And Judy, how did you know how to count? Did you know your numbers, the order of your numbers when you started first grade? Because
I think I knew how to count to 10. That's been a couple of years ago, so I don't I don't really recall that. I think I knew how to count to 10. But I had two older siblings, so that made a difference too.
And you probably knew your colors.
Oh yes, but you only had 5 colors at that time.
In the Crayola box.
That's right.
Right.
8. Maybe there was 8 in there. I don't really.
I think doesn't matter.
Did you ever get a box of 64 crayons?
Not until I got into maybe the 8th grade. If then.
I know. I don't recall ever getting a box of 64 and it had that little pencil sharpener or color crayon sharpener on it.
No, mine didn't have a color crayon sharpener that I can remember.
I think I must have had one when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, folks.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe
she was privileged, Janine.
Well, as the younger sister, I probably got the leftovers.
You probably did, and you were happy with it.
Yes.
Anyway, let's move on beyond colors here. We were all obviously students at the Menoken Grade School in the 50s, and we developed fond memories of Christmas programs. And I don't know if what other schools did, but our programs were outstanding. Often programs consisted of operettas, so they were like little plays, and we sang songs. And then this was followed by the rhythm band, marking time to Christmas carols using different instruments. So for you, what memories stand out about those programs?
Well, like you said, the earliest ones I can remember were when I was in the 4th grade when Mrs. Ernst was the teacher, and that's when the operetta came in because she was such a good music teacher. And that was the first operetta that I'd heard of an operetta, let's put it that way. I do recall when I was in the 1st grade that my best friend to this day, one of my better friends to this day, was a little girl by the name of Marlis, who was so shy that she would not say her piece in front of the class. Matter of fact, when you learned how to read, I had to take her into the library and she would read to me. And the teacher were the only 2 people she talked to. So, I'm trying to adjust my glasses, but I'm not seeing it. Anyway, until the Christmas program, and I was all set to say her part, but her dad was in the audience and she got up there and said it. And from that time on, and she's a public speaker today. So
wonderful.
Super.
when we were chatting earlier, you had mentioned about another classmate who had the lead in the Christmas program and got sick, I think it was.
That's correct.
Okay, can you tell us that story?
That was when I was in the 7th grade, I believe it was, and Sandra T. Ketch had the lead in the play. And just before, maybe a week, 3-4 days before the play was to go on, an outbreak of mumps, I believe it was, came through the school, and the teacher was just devastated as to how we were going to go on, because she had the lead.
Yes.
And I says, well, I know the part. Back then, my memory was very good. Don't ask me today.
Yes.
But so, and I did have the part memorized. So they had to switch around. And I believe my cousin Linda was already in high school, and they brought her in from high school to play my part as I'm going to say a fairy, but I don't.
Okay.
That was wonderful. Well, from what I always knew, the Goehring children, your family, we're all very sharp, and it doesn't surprise me, Judy, that you were capable of filling in and saving the day, you might say, for the Menoken School Christmas program.
Yeah, great.
Were you? I'm thinking about the rhythm band. Is there any particular song that you can remember we did, or what instruments did you play, or how did the progression work for children to play different instruments?
No, I don't. I was trying to think of that the other day, and I don't remember what I actually played.
Okay.
I don't remember that, but I remember at Christmas time we did Up on the Housetop. That I remember. And Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer had just came in at that time. Those were some of the songs that I remember playing. But other than that, no.
Okay.
I remember that little Delray Robertson was the band director.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Uh-huh. And we had these red capes that we wore.
Yes, we did.
They were beautiful. How about the caps that we had on?
Yes, we had a cap of some sort that we wore too.
Yeah.
Somewhere on my picture books at home, I've got pictures of it. But
well, to me, they always look like those Salvation Army hats.
Right, you are right. You are right.
And the capes had sparkly. What was that?
Tinsel.
Tinsel, yeah, sewn on around
it itched.
Yeah.
Right.
Around the neck, and it would itch because it touched your neck. But yes, I can still envision Mrs. Ernst sitting at the piano and playing those songs, a piano set in the angle to the stage while we were up on the stage. And that was really neat for Menoken School to that stage. It became the 2 classrooms where the folding doors opened up, became a little auditorium for the students.
Yes, it did. And I might be wrong on this, but I think the Monday right after Thanksgiving was when you started practicing for the Christmas play. That's when everybody got their parts or whatever. And the week before the Christmas play was produced, you hardly did anything but practice for the opera, because you had music supposed to have music in the morning, and then after lunch you were supposed to have the teacher read to us. That's where I was introduced to the books Little House on the Prairie by Mrs. Ernst. And then towards I think about the last week before Christmas vacation, I think we spent the whole day practically practicing
and then we would get out of school early the day of the program so that we could go home and take a nap or get our hair washed and take a bath and get to school early. Well, I think, were you ever involved with making with your dad and our dad making those bags of candy?
Every year from I mean, I let's see. I'm going to say from about the 5th grade on, And do you remember the ribbon can? They're not near as good today as they were back
Oh, yeah.
then. Those ribbon candies.
Right.
Yes.
And today you couldn't do it because I remember packing those, but you'd have all these brown bags lined up.
Yep.
And you put those chocolate drop things in there.
They're like sugar plums. Sugar plums?
Well, no, not sugar plums. These were the chocolate ones. They kind of looked like a teepee, but they were they were chocolate on the outside, and then they had a white filling in them.
A vanilla, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You got those were in there. You couldn't do it today, but I remember you packed those bags, lined them all up on the kitchen table. I remember, and somebody would go around and throw in some peanuts, and the next one would put in a walnut, and then maybe have these chocolate drops and gum drops, that sort of thing in the bags. I remember them being on our kitchen table.
And didn't the adults get these beautiful red delicious apples?
Yes, they did. The adults all got a red apple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you remember Santa Claus showing up?
Oh yes. Did
your dad ever play Santa Claus?
My dad or your dad played Santa Claus, and then the one year, I don't know whether our two dads got together on it or what, but the one year, and I think it was when I was in the 5th or 6th grade, I don't remember that for sure, we couldn't figure out who Santa Claus was.
Oh.
Because they got Jake Schmidt to play Santa Claus that year.
Oh.
Okay. And I don't recall exactly what year that was, but I know that one year we couldn't. I remember sitting backstage and trying to figure out who Santa Claus was. Both of our dads were in the audience.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we had this. How tall was that Christmas tree that the school board would buy and put in the room?
I don't know. I'm going to say 8 to 9 feet because it was tall that it almost hit the ceiling in the schoolhouse.
Yes.
Do you girls recall that after it got at the school, then it went to of course, you didn't attend that church, then it went to the church in Menoken.
Okay. Yeah, we were there.
Okay. Then it went from the school to the church and from the church to our house.
Oh, is that right?
So it ended up getting cut down 2 or 3 times. We a lot of times that like growing up, we didn't get a Christmas tree till Christmas Eve because it was after the church program that we got. Because it went from the school to the church to our house.
And then it always had to be undecorated from one place, and then it went to the next place and got decorated again. Okay.
Do you remember decorating the tree at school?
I don't know. Did we make decorations for it?
If we did, they were those just the chain ones. You know, on paper that you colored the strips of paper and then glued them and then made a chain out of them. The other decorations, I don't remember where they came from, or that apart I don't recall.
We didn't string popcorn and cranberries, did we, on it? I mean, that was
I don't know. If we did, it would have been cranberries, but I don't recall popcorn. I can't answer that question.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. I'd like to, before we go on, I'd like to tell our viewers that the Mrs. Ernst, who we're talking about, was our Menoken grade school teacher for a number of years, and she taught the grades 1 through 4. Again, Menoken school never did a kindergarten when we were there. It was up to the parents to prepare the children for entering the 1st grade. And interestingly, viewers, if you have had an opportunity to listen to our broadcast of North Dakota auctioneer George Bitts, he talks about having Mrs. Violet Ernst for his first teacher in I think it was the Napoleon School District, and that would have been just before she came to Menoken. So it was really interesting how the time
that's where she came from.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. And then after Menoken, then she ended up going into Bismarck schools. They moved into Bismarck.
Right.
Didn't she teach at the cathedral schools?
St. Mary's?
I don't know where she taught, but I know she went from Menoken to Bismarck someplace.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we've gone through all the programs, Christmas programs. So sometimes school children will say that recess is their favorite subject. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, I don't know about that. Naturally, you didn't have to go to school, but at recess time, we used to play. We had, when I got into I'm going to say fifth grade or whatever, then we would have a softball game. And we chose teams. There was two captains of the team. I think it was usually Donovan Craven and Jerome Schmidt, and they picked their teams. And I remember in the 7th grade, it started that we would go in, and when we would come in from recess, we'd have to say, okay, whose team is up to bat? And because otherwise we'd spend half the time arguing of whose turn it was to bat. But then I think it was Mrs. Arp at the time, but I don't remember that for sure. She would say, okay, who's up to bat? And how many outs do they have? And she'd write it on the board so that we knew when we went out to recess or whatever, we didn't have to spend half the time arguing whose turn it was.
That's a good idea. And of course, there was the school bell rang and brought us in from recess, didn't it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it was a 15-minute recess?
Morning and afternoon, 2 15-minute. And I was trying to recall that. I don't know if it was a half an hour for lunch or an hour, but I think it was a half an hour. But I'm not sure on that. I think you had 15 minutes to eat and 15 minutes to play or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. We've got a lot of good fresh air.
We've spoken just very fondly about our teacher, Mrs. Ernst, and she was wonderfully talented, but she had an obsession concerning addressing the students by their given names and not their nicknames. So if they happen to have a nickname. So I understand you have a special story about that.
Yes, I do, because my given name was Judy. Judy. And of course, Mrs. Ernst had a daughter by the name of Judith, or Judy, whatever. And she insisted that my name be Judith. Oh. Because all the while from the 1st grade through till she came when we were in the 4th grade, I'm going to say James was Jimmy. Tom, his real name was Thomas, but he was Tom to us. And Jerome, we called him Jerry, but they all had to be given their given names. And she insisted my name was Judith. And I remember going out from school the first day of when she was a teacher. She came there when I was in the 4th grade to my mom crying. She says, how do you like your new teacher? I says, will you please go in there and tell her my given name is Judy and not Judith? So she went in there, but she ended up having to take my birth certificate in to prove to her.
Is that right?
That's amazing.
That's when we found out that on my birth certificate, on a little note here, that they made a typo. And on my birth certificate, instead of Goehring, it was Hoeing. So, and it took a while to get that straightened out, because my mother they had to take my birth certificate in and a whole bunch of, kind of a funny story.
Okay. All right. So, well, we've really covered the school, kind of a continuation of what we started at the last fun chat. So let's go on to something that was very important in our community, and that is 4-H clubs. So many young people who live in the country took advantage of membership in 1 or even 2 4-H clubs. So what would you say that some of the benefits of club membership have been for you?
Well, one of the main things for me was being able to public speak. Because if you remember correctly, we had to give a demonstration and a speech.
Right. Every year.
Every year. You had to give a demonstration and a speach.
Was that for each club? Did we do that for each club? Okay.
You did it for each club. At the time when we were there, there was a girls' club and a boys' club. You had Menoken Busy Workers and Menoken Progressive.
Yep.
They were 2 separate clubs. And you had to give a demonstration and a speech in both of them.
Right.
Now, could give all kinds of, and I can get up in front of 1,000 people and give a speech, but you write it for me.
Okay.
You know, because I'm not afraid to get up in front of a crowd and speak. I never have been. But for me to come up and write my own speech,
But you must have done it.
Yeah.
Yep. Are you more of an extemporaneous speaker?
Well, what?
An extemporaneous speaker where you just get up and talk and you don't have a prepared
No.
speech?
Uh-uh.
Oh, okay.
Right.
And then what projects did you take in those 4-H clubs?
Well, if you recall, at the time when we were in 4-H, each year you had a different one. One year it was clothing or sewing, and then you had economics and food. And they didn't, whatever the main topic thing was, is that was what you took. And that's what you exhibited at 4-H Achievement Days. Was if it was food, you had to have something to do with food. You could take these other projects as a sideline, but you had one main. I don't know whether there was 3 or 4 categories. That I don't remember. But I know one year it was food, one year it was economics, and
Home improvement was one year,
Right.
or home. What?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or crafts, photography, babysitting.
those came in later. They didn't
okay.
have the. I think photography was just coming in my later years of 4-H, but
I remember doing that one also. Yeah, could be.
Judy, in the Menoken Progressive 4-H Club, of course, your dad and our dad, were the leaders for a number of years. And do you recall having taken or exhibited any livestock projects? And I do want to mention to our viewers, when we talk about 4-H Achievement Days, for us in Burleigh County in North Dakota, that was like our county fair. Was the when the 4-H kids were able to display and exhibit and compete for awards in those the project areas which they'd taken. But what was your experience in livestock projects, Judy?
My experience, well, I had them all. I experienced beef, sheep, and swine. I did not have much to do with horses. I remember when the one year when I was, they had the showmanship thing, and I had competed for the grand champion showman or overall showman. Anyway, I knew nothing about horses, nothing whatsoever. So that was kind of an interesting thing because I was scared to death of horses, but
oh dear.
And I learned just as I was, because I showed the dairy.
Oh yes,
I have a grand champion dairy heifer, but I learned just as I was about to walk in the arena, I learned that you walk backwards when you show dairy.
Yes. I never could figure out why that was.
I never did either, but I learned that just as I was ready to walk in the arena.
Ooh.
So me and my heifer, we both had to learn. But I did all right. So
yeah, I'm sure you did.
Were there any special steps that you did to prepare your heifer for showing at that time?
Worked with her every day. That's all I can say.
And that was working with her meant having her on halter and teaching her to lead.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. That's where we get that bonding with those animals, isn't it?
Right.
Every day. That's right.
I remember this is getting off of it, but my sister, with her first 4-H steer that she had that steer so tame. I mean, it was till she found out that she had to sell it, and somebody was going to eat it. Then she decided that's enough of that.
Yeah, that's hard.
So many of us developed into the people we are today because of our 4-H membership. So can you think of something kind of off the cuff, how this membership carried over to your adulthood?
The only thing I can say is that I think it helped me to develop not to be afraid to talk in front of a crowd. You know, I mean, I'm not, and get up and talk. If you prepare my speech for me, I could give it to 1,000 people, you know,
Yeah, right.
to write the speech. It was my hard thing. I think that's prepared me to do that. You know, it's why I'm able to read in church and stuff like that, is because of my experience of public speaking.
Right.
That between that and the operettas and school plays we put on in school, you know.
So did you do any canning for 4-H, or did you do that with your mom and then do that as an adult?
I can't remember doing it for 4-H projects. I can't remember the canning. I have done, I don't do it anymore, but I did do canning when I first got married. I used to can peaches and cherries and that sort of thing. But I discovered a thing called canned stuff already in the store.
Yeah. That's a good discovery.
Right.
And were there other activities that I'm thinking of the Menoken Busy Workers did in the community, perhaps working with the Homemakers Clubs in which you were involved?
Every year the Homemakers Club had a special supper that they invited another club to come, and the 4-H girls served the meal for that. You know, I remember one year it was a Chinese meal, or foreign meal that we dressed up in kimonos and stuff, and we did the serving of it. We didn't actually prepare the food, I don't think, but we served it.
Okay.
Yes, I remember that. So, Judy, your parents, Howard and Gladys, were very well thought of in the community. So tell us about the surprise event that the community planned and executed to honor your parents.
They gave them a surprise, and your folks were involved in that. We gave them a surprise 25th wedding anniversary party. And your folks took them out to supper to, I'm going to say the Goehring house, but I think that's what it was called at the time. And then when they came home, your dad did the driving. And when they came home, he pretended like he missed the turn that would go down to our place, you know. Yeah. And then he drove on to Menoken and he went down. Well, what's going on here at the hall, you know? And then when they walked in, that's how they were surprised by that. I remember my mother, because we had on the cards that we had sent out. Now, how we got them cards out without them suspecting, that I don't remember. But anyway, we had put, please do not bring gifts, but if you want to, please contribute something towards their trip to Seattle. Which my mother never got to take. But anyway, and my mother was so mad at us because we did that. You know, and people would put like 50 cents or a silver dollar or whatever. And I still have the container that we used to collect the silver dollars in. She was so, I've got in my album at home, I've got a picture of her looking so mad because we had asked for money, you know, but she never got to take the trip. So,
that's too bad.
Yes, she had. And how long after that 25th anniversary party celebration did she live?
Okay, that party was in March. On the 5th of July, she went into the hospital. That's when we discovered that she had cancer. And on the 6th, I'm going to say the 16th of October, she was gone.
Yeah, from what I remember about cancer, and of course I was a little girl in that time frame, and of course our paternal grandmother had cancer too, about that same time as your mom, Judy. But to me, that's when cancer became a reality in my life, knowing that is a disease that people can get and can cause their demise. And I'm
sorry. Yeah, I did not find out until after, probably maybe 6 months to a year afterwards, that they had the opportunity that my folks could have went to Rochester, because that's when radiation was not here, but radiation was just coming in
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't such a thing as chemo at that time. It was radiation.
Yep.
They had the opportunity to go, but it was one of those things where it was being just coming in, and it was not perfected. The success rate was maybe 20-1, or what, it was not good at all. And my dad just said they decided against it, because I did ask him about it later on, and he says, well, it was just coming in, and they had discussed it, and it was nothing that was tried like it is today.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay.
That's true. Well, Judy,
Well,
we've gone through a lot of wonderful memories about your life in the 1950s, and a couple questions I enjoy asking our guests. And one is, can you think off the top of your head, what was a fun memory for you in the 1950s?
In the 1950s, that's kind of hard to say, because, like I said, that in 1953 was the year that I'm going to say my life changed, because in 1953 was the year that my two cousins, Linda and June Ehlers, that came to live with us in March of 1953. And they lived with us during the school year. And then during the summertime, they went up and lived at my grandparents' place, my grandmother's place up by Wing.
Ah, okay.
Or my aunt's place she lived up by Minot. So it was at that time that they came to live with us in 1953.
Okay.
Well, that's another example of your wonderful parents opening their hearts and their home.
That's right.
Which maybe didn't have room for two more, but those girls were welcomed and became a part of your family.
Right.
Well,
they did. And the thing is from the time that I can remember, there was always an extra person living at our house.
Oh.
I know you know who Kenneth Trauger was.
Yes.
He was one of the first ones that lived with my folks. Kenneth lived with my folks, and of course my grandma Goehring lived there.
Yes.
In our house with us until my dad's older brother and him brought her that little trailer house. And that was when Linda and June came to live with us. So there was always an extra person.
And Kenny Trauger was your cousin or your dad's cousin?
He was my cousin.
Okay.
His mother and my dad were brother and sister.
Okay. Well, yes. And not only did they become a part of your family, but they became a part of our Menoken community. Yeah, I think the community, at least from our family's point of view, we welcomed them. It was great to have them. And of course, Linda was one of our babysitters also.
Right.
Excuse
me here.
And the my last question, Judy, is what from the 1950s, what from your life then has been so influential in your life as an adult?
I don't know. I would have to say my experience in 4-H. It's through 4-H that I got to not be afraid to talk in public. That sort of thing.
It's a valuable program, isn't it? That 4-H.
It is very, very, very.
Well, Jackie, any other questions for Judy that we can share with our viewers and she can respond to? Okay, we're just so.
But you have given us a slice of the 1950s, and that's what we wanted to hear.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So, viewers, our guest today was Judy Goehring Miller. Some people may understand the pronunciation of her maiden name as Goehring, as a familiar name throughout the state of North Dakota and government. And she was our babysitter, folks. And her dad, Howard, was our dad's best friend. And did they ever have fun together, playing together and working together? Yep, the Bobbsey twins. Being in the Menoken community was a wonderful place to grow up in the 50s, and we're so grateful for that. So that's Judy's story and some of our story in the 1950s. What is your story in the 1950s, viewers? We'd love to know about it and chat with you about it on our broadcast. So you can contact us just through this, put a comment below and said, oh, I have a great story of 1950s to tell. Or you can send us an email at sisters@While the Windmill Watched, and we'll get right back in touch with you. Again, that's sisters@While the Windmill Watched. And lots of exciting things coming up with our book, While the Windmill Watched, in the future. Jackie, why don't you remind people about the book tour again upcoming?
I was just about to do that. We are going to start the 29th of September. We will go to Minot, Bismarck, and Fargo. And we have, please do go to our website to see the schedule,
Yes.
the times, the places.
Yep, we'll have it on Facebook too. So that's our story and some of our story about our community in the 1950s. And you might have had experience about with malt shops or cool cars or riding a favorite pony. But for Judy, as what you have heard, it was a family environment. It was the community love and the value that 4-H, the 4-H program, played in her life and still continues to play. So until next time, we'll see you on the 1950s Fun Chat. Bye-bye.
But before we go, I want to remind you to push that little red button to subscribe and the thumbs up button. And until next time, tell your friends, even your relatives, about the 1950s Fun Chat.